Hello, my name is Wildstag, and thank you for tuning in to another used book rant. Today, I'm going to be going back to the D&D Iconics line of novellas with this book, City of Fire. Now, the first thing you can look at with the cover, and I'll put this back up there, this kind of angle does it kind of well. What you can see on that cover is the default, the iconic barbarian, Krusk, who is a half-orc, and in the background you can also see, kind of faded, a gnoll, and gnolls play heavily into this book. The City of Fire is a book set for 4th level adventurers, and you can roughly follow along and make a 4th level adventure in which all of the 4 PCs get to 5th level by the end of the adventure. The back cover has this description: in the sands of a great desert, a once heroic paladin has turned to evil and enlisted an army of gnolls to help retrieve a powerful relic, reputed to be kept in the vaults of the City of Fire. If they find it, the world will never again be at peace. Can a party of 4 stop an army of hundreds? The way this works is that the City of Fire is on another plane. And so Krusk has an item given to him by the man who raised him, who was a prominent member of a city's guard, and had a secret task to protect a key. He then gives Krusk this key and says, "You are faster than all of us. You are the only one with a chance to get away and find help." And so Krusk, against his will, really, he struggles with this decision. He's a half-orc, so in a traditional 3rd edition style of art, he's not supposed to look good. He's supposed to look like a weird mishmash of human and orc, whereas people think, generally in such fiction, that he takes more after the orc side. And that's what's interesting, is that Krusk is a intelligent and very thoughtful character. The book, as far as the adventure goes, opens up with Regdar, the iconic fighter, and Null, who is not the iconic wizard as I discussed in the Savage Caves. Null she is featured in the 3rd edition Player's Handbook. I don't think in the 3.5 Player's Handbook, but she is in the 3rd edition Player's Handbook as a wizard. One of the things I really liked about this book was that, kind of like with the other books in the series, you could roughly tell how closely the authors were following the books by the way they described things, but also you could roughly tell the characters' levels without them explicitly saying it. So, as an example, in the book Oath of Neural, you can roughly tell that the characters are 3rd level, but one of them seems to be 4th level because he casts a spell with an effect that is only possible if you are casting with a 4th caster level. And I assume that rather than being a 4th level character, rather than being a 3rd level character with a level of optimization to increase his illusion spells by 1 caster level, he is actually a 4th level sorcerer. And that's what the Oath of Neural article on the old Wizards of the Coast archive shows, is that 3 of the characters were 3rd level and the sorcerer was 4th level. City of Fire never got one of those articles. Savage Caves got one, The Living Dead got one, The Oath of Neural got one. City of Fire doesn't have that. So I can only make approximations. But while I was reading this book, I did do some discussion with people on a D&D 3rd edition focused server on Discord, and I figured they were probably around level 4 for a couple reasons, and I'll be kind of looking through that chat for those reasons. The main thing is that at one point in the book, Null treats the spell Web as a big option. Web is a 2nd level spell that is defensive and crowd control, by which, to explain those terms, it doesn't do any damage and it controls the battlefield in a way that keeps melee targets from getting to her and hurting her. So it's defensive, but it also controls their speed, their mobility, their positioning in a way that it controls a crowd of enemies, hence crowd control. So Web is treated as a big spell, and she uses that spell more than once. So I'm able to roughly tell that she has 2 to 3 2nd level spells that she can cast, which puts it in the second, let's see, it puts her at either level 3rd or level 4th. Now, realistically, again, because these aren't hyper optimized characters, it's more likely that she is level 4 and has a single bonus 2nd level spell than a highly optimized character with 2 additional 2nd level spells to cast per day. One of the other things I really enjoyed about this book, though, like I said earlier, is that you can roughly trace the character's progression throughout the story. Now, I assume that every character, even if they enter partway through the book, enters with the same experience value as the characters that were around from the start. And so, it starts gaining experience with Regdar and Null, who are with a group of hired help. There's a ranger and a couple other people, hirelings. They don't really have an iconic or a name that you can identify from any D&D art. And the fighter and wizard are facing several orcs and an ogre. So with the way I estimate it, they had 2 local NPC warriors, a ranger and a rogue, in addition to fighter and wizard. At the start of the book, they're escorting a caravan, and they are ambushed by 16 orc warriors, leaving 15 dead and 1 running away. That would be a pretty difficult fight. So, for level 4 PCs, that would be 690 experience. They describe that one, but you don't actually get to see how that plays out. They only describe it in the post. So the first fight you actually read is in the orcs' cave, and they fight 4 orcs, plus the previously mentioned captain that got away, and 2 lieutenant orcs, and then an ogre. So I'm roughly assuming CRs here. The 4 unnamed and unranked orcs are probably the default 1/2 CR, but the lieutenants are probably a bit stronger than that, and as advancement would show, if they have class levels, if they're level 2, they would be CR2s, and the captain would be probably CR3 at least, and the ogre by itself is CR4. You do the math for that. Again, it's a level 7 encounter, very difficult for that party. They win and get 950 experience per person for 4th level. So at this point, we're already at like 1600 experience just from getting level 4 to level 5. If their skill checks also provide them with experience, it's possible that their adventure bridges a full 4,000 experience. Now, looking at this now, I realize my math was off, because I was looking at the wrong column on that table. But what this research instilled in me is this idea that I could turn these novellas into a module for player characters. Each book focuses on 4 iconic characters, and doing the math, it seems to be about even. To expand on some of the other encounters, the paladin helps out at the tail end of the fight with the ogre, and so she would be getting that experience as well. The characters get back to a inn, and there they meet Krusk, who is trying to move on to a different place, but he's too exhausted, too tired. The former paladin that the back cover talks about sends the gnolls after Krusk to catch him, and they, when they finally catch up to the inn, besiege the inn and start firing arrows, burning arrows at the inn. The 4 player characters, the iconic fighter, wizard, paladin, and barbarian, all see what's going on and don't want all of the civilians gathered inside to be killed, so they take the fight outside and turn that encounter. At the inn, they gain about 900 experience. And then on the way to the climactic battle, they end up fighting another group of gnolls. Again, they get about 900 experience. Lastly, we finally meet the former paladin, and it is now a blackguard. It's hard enough for a paladin to fall, because really that paladin is devoted to their cause. They're not going to divert from the straight and narrow easily. But to go from someone who upholds law and good, you would expect maybe a fall where they turn away from their path. They still care about law, but they don't care how many people they have to hurt to impose order. That would be lawful evil. Or they care about good, but they don't care about how many laws and societal rules they have to break to free people. That would be chaotic good. But to go from lawful good to blackguard, which is chaotic evil, you have to do a lot of personality change. The final boss of this adventure is a blackguard who has gnoll assistants. The final fight is with the blackguard and 2 remaining gnolls, a lieutenant, a captain, and the blackguard. Again, I'm assuming that the lieutenant and the captain are going to be different levels, but close in level. So a CR3 and a CR4 gnoll. And then the blackguard, who is CR5. That's another encounter with an encounter level of 7, and thus another encounter with 900 experience value reward, plus any circumstantial experience you get throughout that adventure, and it comes out pretty closely to 4,000. So what I'm seeing when I'm reading these books is that they're designed for people that love D&D, and they don't just want to make adventures featuring those characters, but adventures featuring those rules. And the degree to which they stick to it is really fascinating to me. A while back, I reached out to as many of the authors as I could find on social media. T.H. Lane is a pseudonym. T.H. Lane, right there, is a pseudonym. It's really a collection of, I think, 7 or 8 different authors that were assigned a novella. So I reached out to Phil Athens, who wrote The Savage Caves, and on Blue Sky, I asked, was it intended that every encounter was theoretically level appropriate? Were the stories expected to be playable adventures? And was part of the editing process making sure spells and other effects in game work as they do in the game? And he said, yes, The Savage Caves was more or less their first level adventure, so they were appropriately limited. Then they leveled up as the multi-author and multi-editor series progressed, though I can't say how rigidly that continued to be applied, because he only wrote the first book in the series. He doesn't know if following authors had the same strict rules. And then I asked, was there an expectation that you use D&D specific monsters as opposed to just generic goblins and orcs? Because The Savage Caves uses a D&D specific monster called the Krenshar. And he says anything in the monster manual was fair game, and we could create new monsters too. What his example was is a monster called a hive spider that then showed up in one of the magazines. He said that would then show up in Dragon magazine. In this case, the hive spider debuted in Dungeon magazine, which was for the months of May and June of 2002. The Savage Caves were released in July of 2002. But the way they're described in the adventure in Dungeon Magazine 92 is very clearly based on what he wrote in the Savage Caves. And so he created a new monster for that book in particular. Nothing like that really exists for City of Fire. You really only get gnolls, orcs, ogres, and blackguards, which are all within the monster manual or DMG of D&D. So you're not getting anything new out of this book, any new kinds of content, but you're getting a fun adventure, and I really liked it. There's a twist at the end that I wasn't expecting, and I really liked the way even the gnolls were given personality, because, and this was one of the things I liked about the Savage Caves, in the Savage Caves, the goblins aren't just automatically evil, and there is some cooperation between the first level characters and one of the goblins. In this book, the gnolls are kind of similar. There's emotional bonds between the captain and his lieutenants, and at one point, one of the lieutenants ends up giving his life to save the captain, and that gnoll captain then changes his tactics and is more of a lead from the front kind of captain near the end of the story, because he doesn't want any of his subordinates to get killed if he can do the killing himself. So he doesn't want his subordinates to be killed for him. And that's a really cool personality trait to be giving to the primary antagonist. The Blackguard is the one in charge, but the gnoll is the one we actually see throughout the book. And that gnoll is really fun to read. It's a short book. It's only 184 pages. And I bought this for like $3. But it's a really fun book that I enjoyed spending $3 on. I've read this a couple times while I was doing the project of putting together that module. And I'm still not going to post these modules online yet. I do want to get a group together that is willing to play as a control group a core only run of the Savage Caves and then later Oath of Neural before I really start posting these online to show, yes, the books are actually complete adventures that you can run for your group. I really like it though, and I'm really glad I found this book at Coes Books randomly. You know, it's one of those things where you find something and you just fall in love with it. And that's what this book is. So, yeah. My name is Wildstag, and thank you for tuning in to another used book rant.